Transportation Committee Chair Deb Barber. It is Monday, January 24th, 2022. Before I call the meeting to order, I'd like to say a few things about how we'll conduct this meeting. I want to acknowledge that COVID-19 is causing us to alter our usual procedures. Due to the ongoing pandemic, Council Chair Zelli has determined that it's not reasonable or prudent to conduct in-person meetings at this time. Accordingly, Met Council members will participate in this meeting by phone or other electronic means, and this Transportation Committee meeting will be conducted under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. Because we are conducting the meeting electronically, all votes must be taken by roll call. Before we start the meeting, we need to establish whether there is a quorum. With that, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss. Chambliss? I can see you. I can't hear you. Councilmember Chambliss?
Here.
There we go. Cummings? Ferguson? Fredson?
Here.
Gonzalez?
Here.
Sterner?
Here.
Zirin? And Barber.
Here. Having a quorum, we'll call to order the meeting of the Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee for January 24th, 2022. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. If there are no changes or additions requested by council members, I'll look real quick. All right, we can determine the agenda is approved and move on to approval of the minutes, and it's approval of the January 10th, 2022 Transportation Committee. Did anyone have any changes or additions to the minutes? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Fredson, I move approval.
Moved by Fredson. Is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Seconded by Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss?
Aye.
Cummings? Ferguson? Fredson?
Aye.
Gonzalez?
Aye.
Sterner? Sterner? Councilmember Sterner, can you try again?
Looks like he's frozen.
Zirin and Barber.
Aye. And with that, the minutes are approved. And now we're moving over to employee recognition. So I'm going to turn it over to General Manager Koistra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And most people here may recall that before the transportation meeting became virtual, we took time about once each month to recognize a Metro Transit employee or team doing exemplary work. So we're kind of excited. We're kind of tired of waiting for the pandemic to end, and we're excited to bring this back this year to the virtual meetings. The recognition focuses on employees who have gone above and beyond their duties in unique ways. And as you might know or recognize, there are so many deserving people here throughout Metro Transit. This is even more true with all the demands that have been placed on staff during this time. Today, we want to recognize the innovation and teamwork that went into our COVID-19 vaccination buses that traveled the state to bring vaccines to some of our hardest to reach populations. Earlier this month, the Commissioner of the Department of Human Services presented us with a DHS Circle of Excellence Award for the vaccine bus partnership with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota and the Minnesota Department of Health. Behind the scenes, there were many people who helped make this possible. One of them was Transit Supervisor Lance Wallace, who was our lead supervisor on the project. In his role, Lance helped find and schedule operators who could bring the buses to clinics. In many cases, he traveled with the bus to make sure everything went well. Over several months, Lance served as a critical and trusted resource for our partners in this initiative. And in December, Lance celebrated his 17-year anniversary with Metro Transit. So thank you, Lance, for all your years of service and for representing us so well, both here in the Twin Cities and across Minnesota, as this was a statewide project. With that, I will turn this over to Lance's manager, Antoinette Brisson, who would like to make a few brief comments as well.
Good afternoon. Thank you, West and Transportation Committee, for recognizing Lance. He has served as a go-to person for everyone on our team and is most deserving for the efforts and how he handled the vaccination buses, pulling together departmental SOPs, just becoming a strong voice and representing, making sure that Metro Transit and the council as a whole was successful in their partnership and continued partnership with MDH and Blue Cross Blue Shield. So again, thank you, and thank you, Lance, for your hard work.
Very good. Thank you. And it's nice to have this back. It's very much appreciated. And thank you, Lance, for all the hard work. That was such an important program. And, you know, we've definitely gotten great feedback, and it was a really good way to provide a great service to the community, and your efforts are very much appreciated. So thank you very much. All right, next we are on to our next item, which is the TAB report. We have Mr. Dugan here, who's going to report in the last 2 TAB meetings. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter. Peter, you're on mute.
Should know better. But I don't.
There you go.
Now, it's only been 2 years of WebEx calls. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, the Honorable Council members, General Manager Koistra, Director Carlson, and Jenna, thank you as always for what you do behind the scenes. Mr. Koistra, congratulations on that award. It's quite an achievement. Many of the December action and information items were presented to you on January 10th, at your January 10th meeting. The action and information items from the TAB meeting of last week will be presented today. You will see some of them in the consent items, and also Heidi Schallberg will be presenting in item 4, the safety performance measure targets, and then Tony Fisher and Brendan Jordan from Great Plains will be presenting as an information item the electric vehicle planning study results. So we will focus on agency updates. MnDOT, from December, there was a Transportation Alliance hosted workshop on the infrastructure bill. And they made most point of fatalities along our roadways. In 2021, fatalities caused by speed statewide were 33%, an increase of 34% from the previous years. In the metro, 43% of the crashes resulted in fatalities, with an increase from the prior year of 75%. Statewide, pedestrian fatalities increased 29%, 95% in the metro, 95% occurred in the metro. 95% increase in the metro. And for motorcycles, statewide increase was 5%, in the metro, 54%. As you know, the MPCA report referred to the governor's subcabinet on climate that is drafting a climate action plan in the next, currently, it will be finalized by mid-year. As you know, you were one of the Met Council, you folks are one of the prime organizations in the climate subcabinet, and with its goal of reducing greenhouse gases and achieving 100% clean energy by 2050. From the MAC, this again, mainly for your constituents, highly recommended to use the pre-authorized parking to guarantee a spot. All you need to go is to the MSP website and search parking. For December, the travel was 80% of 2019, the last, quote, normal year. In January, it was determined that the operating revenue for 2021 was only down 10.6%. Concessions are now open at 83% level, some full and some part-time. The walk-in COVID testing has been so successful that it caused traffic backups. Now an appointment is required. Regarding the authorization of a strike by the Teamsters, who represent the snowplow drivers, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, as I said, they voted to authorize a strike. The contract ended December 31st. The IUOE, the International Union of Operating Engineers, represents field maintenance operators, mechanics, and parts room technicians. As of January 16th, a tentative agreement has been reached. I checked today, but there's no vote been taken. And in regard to what you may have heard about 5G, I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Heidi Schallberg, a planner with your agency, and Russ Owen, the aviation planner with your agency, to get updated information. in general, the role of 5G is to increase data speeds and increase availability of common terms streaming. As of January 6th, as I'm sure you know from the news reports, Verizon and AT&T delayed the rollout at MSP for 2 weeks. The reason is this the 5G is said to potentially affect the altimeter. And the crash avoidance system. The crash avoiding systems track the aircraft at 2,500 feet of elevation or less. This could affecting the altimeter could impact the auto land and auto throttle features of the airplane. Mr. Owen was good enough to report that in all likelihood, so far the towers around MSP have not been converted, and if they are converted, it will affect mostly some aircraft, primarily smaller and regional jets, which will not be able to operate out of MSP until the altimeters can be certified. Next, from the chair's report, we have new appointments to the TAB, and in Ramsey County, generally, Trista Martis Castillo, Commissioner. She is in, that is in Councilmember Chai Lee's district. For Citizen District B, Randy Maluchnik, former Commissioner of Carver, right, Deb? I think Carver or Scott. And that is in Deb's district. And in District C, and that would be Molly, that's District 5 and 6, Molly, and it's a vacant, was Andy Lewis was brought on as a TAB appointee. Also, although this was done by your agency, I just wanted to give you a couple of highlights of the demographic report that was presented to the TAB in January. Every county grew in from 2010 to 2020 census. The metro region, the 7 county, is home to 55% of Minnesota's residents, and it had 78% of the state's growth from 210 to 220. By way of context, in the 1990s, from 1990 to 2000, 358,000 people were added to the metro. The 2000s, 207, and the 2010s, 20s, 313,000. All areas showed an increase in diversity, particularly among the BIPOC population. Also in December, there was an update, from the Sustainable Transportation Advisory Council, which is administered by MnDOT, and as you know, reports to MnDOT Commissioner to help achieve the transition of Minnesota to low carbon transportation system. The strategies involve vehicle type fuel system operations, which is easy pass and transit, vehicle mile transit. I also was able to, along with another TAB member, John Ulrich, participate in the Met Council's planning scenario workshops. Council member Vento and I were on the same workshop, and I believe Council member Fredson was also participating, and this is very much backed by our chair, Deb Barber. And I'm not sure if Mr. Ferguson is on the call, but I wanted to wish him good luck and goodbye. So that's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I do think Councilman Ferguson has joined us, but he's joined us by phone. So did anyone have any questions or comments for Peter? All right, seeing and hearing none. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. We're on to other reports. So we have MTS Director Carlson first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last meeting, we began with a public hearing on the Transportation Policy Plan Amendment. The comment period on the amendment closes at the end of the hour, and as of this morning, we've received about 40 comments on the amendment. So some good responses, and in the weeks ahead, we'll be reviewing comments, and we'll bring the amendment as a business item for council approval sometime in the first quarter. This next item is underway across the council. It's not unique to MTS, but the FTA has notified the council it's conducting a triennial review, and this review assesses management practices and programs to ensure programs are administered in accordance with FTA requirements. So MTS, Metro Transit, and regional administration staff have been working diligently to fulfill the initial request for information and documents. As preparing these has been a big lift, I wanted to express appreciation for staff across all divisions, particularly our teams in MTS, for completing this important and time-sensitive work. Virtual on-sites for the triennial will be scheduled at a later date, yet to be determined by the FTA. And that's the update for me, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Are there any questions or comments from council members? All right, then I will turn it over to General Manager Koistra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So beginning with the COVID update, since the last Transportation Committee meeting on January 10th, we've had 192 cases of COVID reported by our employees. We have recorded 276 cases in the month of January through yesterday, which is the most of any month since the start of the pandemic. This is following the statewide trend. Since the start of the pandemic, we have now had more than 1,000 positive cases among our employees. So with just a few days to go this month has represented more than 25% of our total cases. Today, we have 80% of employees report being fully vaccinated. And like so many businesses and schools, staff shortages that already existed are being made worse due to the isolation and quarantine absences. As for us, this includes bus and train operators, facility maintenance workers, and police officers. Overall, the team responsible for employee scheduling, including dispatch and supervisory staff, have truly done an exceptional job to minimize service disruptions and carry out the critical work during this time. You may hear from constituents who have missed trips, but there are remarkable efforts behind the scenes every day to minimize these occurrences. So continuing with the operator update, bus operator staffing levels continue to be about 20 full-time and part-time weekday operators below our ideal levels for our service plans. And this is without taking into account the impacts of the COVID-related absences. On the bright side, bus operator hiring events were again held on January 15th and January 19th. And from these events, 28 applicants passed the initial screening and interview phase. Candidates who have a CDL or CDL permit will be fast-tracked to a background review before joining one of our new higher classes. We will offer other candidates assistance to complete their CDL permit work so they can join our team as soon as possible. We have multiple hiring events planned for each month through the spring. And then finally, I just want to recognize the work of our facilities maintenance staff with all the snow that is falling in very cold weather. When you are out shoveling your sidewalks and driveways, please keep the enormous task of snow removal on our system in your minds. So really appreciate that work. The snow seems to never end.
Thank you, Wes. Any questions or comments? I will just echo the thank you to all of the people out keeping our bus stops and stations clear, because it's been a lot of snow and it's been very cold. So we're very appreciative of their work. So if there's nothing else, we'll move on to our business items. The first item is the consent agenda. There are 9 items on consent tonight. I'd entertain a motion to approve the items on consent.
Moved by Ferguson.
It's moved by Ferguson. Is there a second?
Fredson, I'll second.
Seconded by Fredson. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin, and Barber.
Aye. With that, the consent agenda is approved. Now we're on to our non-consent items. The first is business item 2022-5, which is the zero emission bus transition plan adoption. We have Carrie Desmond here. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Barber. My name is Carrie Desmond. I'm a principal engineer in engineering and facilities for Metro Transit, focused on electric bus infrastructure. So today I'm going to talk through business item 2022-05, which is adoption of the Zero Emission Bus Transition Plan. Zero Emission Bus Transition Plan is a framework to identify how Metro Transit will continue planning for a transition to a zero-emission bus fleet, including battery electric buses. An information item detailing the project process and findings was presented to Committee of the Whole on January 5th, 2022. 3 guiding principles and 6 supporting actions were established as the framework for the transition plan and for use in defining the definition of a successful transition to zero-emission buses. The guiding principles are technical viability, equity and environmental justice, and fiscal impact. The zero-emission bus transition plan establishes a short-term target for Metro Transit of at least 20% of 40-foot bus replacements procured to be battery electric between 2022 and 2027. Additionally, Metro Transit plans to update the council at least once per year on performance of the zero-emission bus fleet and infrastructure, as well as update the capital and operating plans annually based on performance. Metro Transit also intends to host public engagement activities at least once per year on progress towards the plan. Metro Transit's developing the plan in accordance with Minnesota Statute 473.3927. The Zero Emission Bus Transition Plan will advance all 5 Thrive 2040 outcomes, including stewardship, prosperity, equity, livability, and sustainability. The legislature appropriated $250,000 in fiscal year 2022 for the Zero Emission Bus Transit Vehicle Transition Plan under Minnesota Statute Section 473.3927. There's no small business inclusion tied to this action, and the plan development included a robust process for community engagement, along with ongoing engagement with regional stakeholders. So the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council adopt the Zero Emission Bus Transition Plan for submittal to the Minnesota State Legislature by February 15th, 2022, as required by Minnesota Statute 473.3927. And with that, I will take any questions.
Very good, thank you. Any questions from council members? I'll just make a brief comment if nobody, I just want to echo, you've heard us say this in the other meetings, but really, really nice work on all of this. It's not only was it well thought out, but it's really important for us to have a good solid plan of how to move forward. And I feel like we've really done that. And so thank you for all the hard work. It's much appreciated. Anything else from other council members? All right, then I entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-5.
This is Sterner. I'd make a motion to approve the item.
It's moved by Sterner. Is there a second?
Second by Gonzalez.
Seconded by Gonzalez. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Evans, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin, and Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carrie. Next, we're on to business item 2022-4, which is mobile column lifts for the Minneapolis bus garage. And not sure.
Robert Rimstead here.
There you go. Robert Rimstead's here to present.
So thank you, Chair Barber and council members. Again, I'm Robert Rimstead with Engineering Facilities here to present the following business item. The business item is specifically for the purchase of mobile columns, but as we kind of wanted to give an update on the project, the last time we presented to the council on an information update was last May of 21, and a lot of progress on site has taken place. So I'm just going to run through this presentation here and kind of give an information update, and then we'll cover the business item at the end. So can everyone see the slide deck?
Not yet.
Okay.
Greg, could you put up the slide deck? Oh.
Yeah, I have it up here in front of me if fine with me sharing my screen here. I'll pull it up here. Okay. Let's see here. I'll try to. Actually, let me zoom in here a minute here. All right, so let me know once people can see this. Wait, nope, almost there. Forgot the extra share button. That's all right.
There you go.
We got it here. No problem. Thought I had it ready to go here. So I'm going to scroll down here again. Here's the second slide here. So this is just general information, just to remind everybody about the facts for the project. It's a 2-level facility. The level 1 being revenue processing, some admin space, and parking for staff. And the level 2 is the main function of the garage. And here's some of the parking spaces and the maintenance functions here, and the general design parameter for the quantity of buses that can fit in there. As far as a project schedule, we just kind of zoomed in here. This presentation here is to kind of show where we're at, where we're getting closer, showing some of the construction milestones up here at the top, where we're at substantial completion for two different portions, and then the final completion towards the end of December. Then the implementation milestones to allow us to start moving into the building, testing out systems, and the plan for starting revenue service in March of 2023. So again, just trying to capture some pictures of this project for everybody to be able to see. We're going to start here with the exterior first. So this is about where the last time we presented the precast system of the building was still being installed in June of 21. And then just some shots around the perimeter of the building just to see how far those exterior finishes are coming along around the building here. And then the roof for the building. Again, in June, they're still getting insulation materials up on the roof, and progress just continued throughout October into August and December. And the roofing is coming along. They've pulled off the site for the winter for right now. And then as the temperatures, they'll finish it off in the spring. The last remaining areas is mainly over the bus parking area, but they got the areas completed over where a lot of the interior mechanical and other systems work will go into the building. Down to the street level parking in June here. This is what it looked like, and then they were able to get the first layer of asphalt down in October. And you can see the progress here going throughout. On the bus storage area, again, last June, they were on top of the precast, putting down the waterproofing insulation and vapor barriers, and then just continuous pours of the floor throughout the year, and then getting ready for a lot of these the mechanical and the piping work to go in here right now. In the bus maintenance area, again, same thing with the precast, getting some of the pits ready to receive the bus lifts and hoists, and this is one of the deeper 3-post lift. This is more of the platform lift that will lift the bus up, and then here's those platforms starting to get installed as of December this year. On the main level for some of the mechanical systems, up in this area on the top of this upper left is where a lot of this mechanical system goes in, and then there's pictures of additional duct work and piping going in. You can see in December it's starting to get a lot more crowded up there with all the systems that go in to support the building. The 2-story office space or the administrative area that helps with bus operations and their daily service. Again, with the June and with the framing of it, getting a lot of the drywall and mud up. The painting and the cabinetry is going in, and some of the nicer interior finishes. We have a few nicer areas as people enter the building to try to have a little bit of nicer environment as people enter the building and take advantage of having a nice bright lit space for everybody to come into the site, the building. The total budget for the funding, we remain on track with the project. We continue to increase the construction contract as change orders occur, and then reduce the contingency as we go through the project. And as far as the DBE participation, the goal for the project was 15%. The commitment was 15.4%, and both for the construction and the ITL, they are on track to meet those goals. And so here now we get into the business item for the mobile columns for the bus garage. And so the mobile columns will go, it's a total of 7 sets for 7 different maintenance bays. And so here's a picture on the upper piece of the mobile columns and how they actually lift the bus. They're wireless columns that do communicate with each other to be able to then lift up the bus all at the same time. They're able to lift them quickly and efficiently, and they have a good locking system to keep it in place. So here's another picture again where the flat work areas that these mobile columns will be installed in the bus garage. And so with that, the proposed action is for the Metropolitan Council to authorize the regional administrator to execute the purposes of the mobile column lifts utilizing the state contract in the amount not to exceed $542,000. So with that, I'll take any questions on the business item or the project overall.
Very good, thank you. Are there any questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Do we have a motion
Chair,
and a
do you need a
second?
motion?
Did I miss it?
Oh, no, I just,
Fredson, I'll make the motion to approve the staff recommendation.
sorry. To moving too fast and processing the next thing. All right, so is there a second?
Second, Fred Sterner.
Seconded by Sterner. All right, I'm happy to say that's the first time I've done that during the pandemic, so that's pretty good. All right, with that, is there any other discussion? All right, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Of course. Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin, and Barber.
Aye, with that, the motion carries. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Next, we are on to business item 2022-15. It's the Metro Blue Line Extension Master Funding Agreement, and we have Nick Landwehr here.
Good afternoon, Chair and council members. My name is Nick Landwehr, and I'm here to present business item 2022-15. And the proposed action for this business item is that the council authorized the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a master funding agreement number 21I-032 with Hennepin County for the Metro Blue Line Extension Light Rail Transit Project. So the background of this is that this is a reciprocal master funding agreement that provides a method to transfer the funds back and forth between the council and the county for reimbursement of professional and construction services, and to provide a method to transfer the funds from the county to the council for activities related to the project. This MFA also identifies required federal and state and local clauses, provisions, and procedures that will govern subsequent subordinate funding agreements that will be under this MFA, and it establishes the ability to enter into subsequent SFAs with the county. The SFAs are work order agreements that define the scope of work and authorize the use of funds from the project or from the county to the project, and establish schedules and govern the transfer of funds between the county and the council. The council anticipates executing future SFAs with Hennepin County for staffing, design, and construction related activities related to the project. So since 2020, when the council and the county issued a joint statement to advance the project without using 8 miles of the freight railroad right away, the council and the county have been working together to explore community supported alignments that mitigate the use of that freight rail property. The project anticipates that and recommending a community supported route this coming March 2022, which will trigger the resumption of environmental activities, design, and engineering activities for the project. And this MFA will be necessary to support those activities and to advance the project. And so the rationale for this MFA is to provide that ability for the council to compensate the county for the use of its technical and professional staff working on the project, and to transfer funds from the county to the council for expenses and activities related to the project. So in the Thrive lens, this is an investment in a high quality transportation option that advances the Thrive outcome of prosperity by providing new and improved access to economic and personal opportunity throughout the project corridor, and increasing the available workforce with affordable and convenient transportation. It increases access to financial opportunities, educational opportunities, and health services, and that are a key outcome of implementing the project and advancing the Thrive outcome of livability. The project advances equity by investing in high quality, fast, and frequent transit service, and roughly half of the corridor population identified within this corridor are Black, Indigenous, or people of color. And there are approximately 8,200, or about 14% zero car households along this corridor, and nearly 15% of the households are living below the poverty level. And funding for this MFA, there are no funding impacts associated with the authorization of this MFA. It's the future SFAs will authorize the use of funds for the project activities within the framework set by the MFA. So with that, Chair, if there are any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council members? All right, Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes, I don't have a question, just a comment that I like the fact that we are cooperatively advancing the financial administrative process for kickstarting the Blue Line extension. So, this is where it starts to get real, and looking forward to approving the next steps.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-15.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this business item.
It's moved by Chambliss. Is there a second?
Fredson, I'll second.
Seconded by Fredson. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zieren, and Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. All right, thank you, Nick. Next, we're on to business item number 2022-21, which is the 2022 Safety Performance Measure Targets. And we have Heidi Schallberg here to present.
Thank you, Chair Barber and members. I'm also co-presenting today with Judd Hansen, our planner. You may remember him last year when he was here as our intern working with us all this time, and we're pleased that he is now in a permanent position with us on staff in MTS. So Judd will actually kick it off, and then I will jump back in about halfway through.
Perfect. Welcome, Jed.
Thank you, Chair Barber and members of the committee. I will be covering our federal requirements for target setting and briefly cover the target setting methodology, and then Heidi will discuss our actual safety performance and related planning work. Next slide, please. Okay, the Metropolitan Council is required to set safety targets under the Federal Highway Administration Safety Performance Final Rule. The targets have a handful of purposes, most importantly to inform the ways we can reduce fatal and serious injuries through our planning and programming processes. Both State Department of Transportation and MPOs establish targets for 5 measures, and metropolitan planning organizations may establish targets through a quantifiable method that's specific to their planning area, or agree to adopt State Department of Transportation targets. State DOT targets are assessed annually for significant progress, and the Federal Highway may adjust their Highway Safety Improvement Program allocation based on that progress. However, MPOs are not assessed or penalized by Federal Highway for failing to meet targets. Next slide, please. In 2021, the Council adopted targets that decreased steadily from a baseline to 0. The 2020 targets were held over into 2021 with the understanding that future year targets would reduce on a straight line to reach the region's share of 2025 goals in the Minnesota Strategic Highway Safety Plan. The statewide goal is no more than 225 deaths and 980 serious injuries by 2025. This method was developed through peer region research and with feedback from an ad hoc safety targets work group. This target setting method is aggressive compared to most peer MPOs. However, these are targets for measuring our performance. Ultimately, our ability to achieve these targets is determined by our funding and programming processes to reach these outcomes. Next slide, please. There was no public comment period in target adoption, though targets get integrated into the Transportation Improvement Program. When the TIP was out for public comment this fall, we received 9 comments on the 2021 targets requesting lower safety targets or adoption of a Vision Zero approach to safety planning. Some of the notable comments called the targets appalling, abhorrent, disappointing, and mortifying. There was also a social media thread regarding the targets that gained significant engagement. Next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed targets under this methodology. The first row shows the adopted targets from 2021, which we will revisit shortly when Heidi covers preliminary performance from last year. The second row highlighted in gray indicates the targets recommended by the tab as outlined in the action item for discussion today. The recommended targets for 2022 are 98 fatalities, which is a 1/3 fatality per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, 669 serious injuries, which is 2.25 serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and 164 pedestrian and bicycle fatalities and serious injuries. The following rows in the table illustrate how this target setting methodology reduces targets over time. These are provided for your information. The council and its committees will still be asked to consider targets annually. The 2025 row represents the region's share of the state's 2025 goal as outlined in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. Chair, that concludes my portion, and Heidi will cover our performance and related planning work.
Thanks, Jed. Next slide, please. So the next 3 slides are showing, as Jed mentioned, we just wanted to take this target setting opportunity as a chance to review our actual performance each year in comparison to what we've set as targets. So the next 3 slides show the actual numbers compared to the targets that we have set since this process began with 2018 numbers. So on this particular slide, this one shows all fatalities. The top line, the blue line, is the actual numbers each year, and the bottom line, the green line, are the targets that we've set. And then as Jed mentioned, the last 3 years of those are assuming we would continue the same methodology to show that progression. So with this year, with preliminary numbers that we have for 2021 to date, we are still in a preliminary reporting period for these, as these are still being adjusted. For the 7-county region, we're going in a disturbing wrong trend with 184 people who died on our roadways in our region compared to the target of 106. So you can see from the previous slides, we had been in the previous few years decreasing slightly. I do want to put it in the context that we are not in isolation in this. This is a national trend that we're seeing across the country with this year. And the US DOT is working on a national roadway safety strategy that they expect to release yet later this month. Next slide, please. So the serious injuries target, you can see with this, we are still expected to miss this target this year with our preliminary numbers showing 826 people seriously injured on our roadway systems throughout the region compared to their target, which was 738. This is a departure from the previous 2 years where we were slightly under our targets for those years from previous ones. Next slide, please. So the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries performance measure that's required, I do just want to emphasize these numbers are included in the numbers in those 2 previous slides for the total numbers. So this is really just kind of a subset that calls out the most vulnerable users on our roadway system. So it looks at bicyclists and pedestrians who have been killed or seriously injured in the past year. And this is a similar pattern of the past 2 years, previous 2 years to last year. We did come in slightly under on the targets for this measure, but with the preliminary numbers for 2021, we will be missing this target with 210 people biking and walking killed or seriously injured compared to our target would have been 181. Next slide, please. So with looking at comparisons, it can be useful to compare to an average, because you can see there is some fluctuation year to year. And so just not just looking solely at the previous year, but looking at an average of multiple years to use as a comparison. And so the slide is just kind of basically showing the all fatalities and the serious injuries with the pedestrian and bicycle numbers broken out separately as subsets of those numbers, so you can see the differences between the comparison between our 2021 preliminary numbers in the previous year, as well as the 3-year average. So there's a starker difference between 2021 and 2020, with a 59% increase in all fatalities and an 80% increase in pedestrian fatalities. When we look at the 3-year average, it's a little bit lower, but still an alarming increase, a 47% increase in all fatalities between that 3-year average and 37% increase on pedestrian fatalities. We are still seeing an increase as well on the serious injuries, though not to the same degree as the fatalities. Next slide, please. So the recommendations before you today and the resolution along with this business item, the committees before this one, from TAB to our technical committees, have supported continuing setting the methodology that we adopted last year, which, as Jed described, reduces our targets annually to work toward our region's share of the statewide goals on our way towards zero. Next slide, please. So the ad hoc work group that Jen mentioned did have 3 other recommendations. I want to clarify these are not part of the motion before you today, which is solely focused on adopting the 2022 targets. So we're taking these as staff direction to look for ways to incorporate these into our existing work or find other opportunities to address these. But we did want to make sure to convey these to policymakers. So the first, again, as Jed mentioned, MPOs are not officially reviewed by US DOT to see if we're meeting our targets or not. So our state DOTs may have financial implications if they're not meeting our targets. We don't have that review process at the federal level. However, the work group noted there's nothing stopping us as a region from creating our own framework to hold ourselves accountable. When we're not meeting our targets, how should we be making changes to ensure to address that need? So this could take different forms, such as increasing funding from the regional solicitation, but may also need some shorter term actions as well, just considering the timeline of when projects are actually built from the solicitation. The second one was that the region really does need to have a discussion about our different policy goals, the investments for those, and the trade-offs that happen between those goals, so they can better communicate priorities and where safety is within those. So our work program for this year does include a study in preparation for our next transportation policy plan update to review our policy plan goals and have some engagement around those to look at updating them in preparation for the next policy plan. So this is something that could fit well potentially within that work. And then the third recommendation was to have a work group to review our regional solicitation criteria and the weightings used to make sure that those are emphasizing safety improvements that can help us address these safety targets focused on fatal and serious injuries. Next slide, please. And then just lastly, 2 of the things we're working on in MTS to help with the region to elevate this as an issue across all of our partners at all levels. We'll be wrapping up the pedestrian safety action plan work in the first part of this year. We looked at not just where crashes have happened, but trying to look at factors in those crashes to see where they may be more likely to happen across our network, identify some infrastructure countermeasures and other programmatic recommendations for the council. Our second study will be kicking off later this year, in the second part of this year, and that would focus on all vehicle crashes, and then would include bicycle and vehicle crashes as well, whereas the ped safety one is just focused on pedestrian and vehicle crashes. So we are beginning to scope that out this month. I will say that TAB had significant discussion about this item at their meeting last week, and they were very interested in seeing more information, such as more detail about factors like weather and roadway conditions, relationship to transit ridership. And so some of that more detail would likely be included in this type of study that we'll be doing. We also did have TAB member interest in that work group that I had mentioned. That was one of the recommendations as well. Next slide, please. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, we would ask for your support in the recommendation on the targets for 2022.
Sorry, are there any questions from council members? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes, so this recommended work group, would that include MnDOT? Did I miss that part?
Madam Chair and members, the work group for the regional solicitation. I would say on safety, we closely work with MnDOT. MnDOT is one of our routine partners. And so we would be highly unlikely to have any meaningful safety conversations without probably multiple offices at MnDOT involved.
Okay.
All right. Any additional questions or comments? All right, because it wasn't on the slide deck, I'll read the proposed action that the Metropolitan Council adopt Resolution 2022-02, setting 2022 targets for safety performance measures for the metropolitan planning area. If there are no other questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item number 2022-21.
Fredson, move approval.
Moved by Fredson. Is there a second?
Second by Sterner.
Second by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Siren, and Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you very much, Heidi and Judd. And we're on to our final business item, which is the same week item as business item number 2022-22, administrative modification number 1 to the 2040 transportation policy plan. And we have Steve Elmer here to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to start by reminding the committee that the background info for this business item was presented at the last committee meeting on January 10th. So I'll be relatively brief with my remarks today. So in 2021, we implemented a formal process, or a set of processes actually, whereby local government agencies had the opportunity to update one or more of 3 transportation modal networks that are already established within the TPP based on recent updates to their local plans. And the 3 networks are the Regional Bicycle Transportation Network, or RBTN, Regional Bicycle Barriers, and Regional Truck Freight Corridors. All 3 of these networks are used as one in a series of criteria for selecting projects for federal funding through the regional solicitation. And now, just to be clear about what is and what is not included in an administrative modification, I just wanted to take a moment to contrast it to the more formal policy plan amendment process. So an administrative modification is a minor revision to the long-range transportation plan that does not change the list of funded projects or make major changes to the funded projects in the TPP. And due to these characteristics, the administrative modification does not have the following requirements, which are required for a full plan amendment. So the modification does not require a reassessment of fiscal constraint, does not require a new determination of conformity to air quality standards, nor does it require an official public process for review and comment. So those are the significant differences between those 2. And the purpose of this administrative modification is to incorporate these recent network updates into the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan. And as indicated in the maps that are documented in Attachment 1, the Administrative Modification Report. And also, these were changes that were previously approved by the Transportation Advisory Board for the 2022 regional solicitation. And though not required, there was provided a public review period by which the public could comment on the RBTN and regional bicycle barriers updates. And those results are also included in the attached public comment report, which is also related to the proposed action. And with that, I will read the proposed action. It is that the Metropolitan Council approve administrative modification number 1 to the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan to incorporate the Regional Bicycle Transportation Network, Regional Bicycle Barriers, and Regional Truck Freight Corridors networks as revised through the 2021 update process, and to accept the associated public comment report. So with that, I we'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair. If there are any questions or needed clarifications, I can help with that.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-22. Same.
Fredson will move approval.
Moved by Fredson. Is there a second?
Stern.
Seconded by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings, Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin, and Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Very good. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And then we're done with our business for the evening. So I would look at the agenda. I would say, well, for sure the same week, item number 5, we'll have to go non-consent to the full council. And then I thought the other one we should is business item 1, the zero emission bus transition plan. And there's no other objections. You guys agree with that?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. We will go with that. Now we're on to our information items for the evening. We have the semi-annual FTA DBE report to FTA, and I believe we have Ashanti Payne here to present, and Trina Bolton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, council and committee members. Ashanti Payne, Assistant Director with the Office of Equal Opportunity, and I am joined by Trina Bolton, who performs many of the activities associated with our FTA funded procurements from a regulatory and compliance standpoint. We're here this evening to present our semi-annual results for our FTA DBE report. And I will just say that our report is due to be submitted into FTA's asset management system by December 15th of each year, and we exceeded or got that report submitted on time early. Also, if we are short of our goal, we are required to complete a shortfall analysis, and I am pleased to say that we are not required to do that this year. This is one of several or many tools that we have to ensure a level playing field and maximize participation from our certified businesses, and is singular to our FTA funded activities. With that, I will turn it over to Trina Bolton.
Thank you, Ashanti. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Next slide, please. So this is some overall information. DBE applies to any project that receives part or whole federal funds. It includes construction projects, architecture and engineering, and professional technical contracts. We are required to do analysis and establish a 3-year goal, which is referred to as our triennial goal. Our goal for federal fiscal years is 2021 to 2023, and it is 14%. Project-specific goals are established by the small business unit staff and light rail transit members. We report this utilization to FTA on a semi-annual basis, and the achievement is measured against the contracts that were awarded over those federal fiscal year periods. Next slide, please. So this is the DBE utilization by award. It includes the June report towards the top of the slide with the reporting period of October 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021. The December report is in the middle of the slide with the reporting period of April 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2021. And the combined total for 2021 is at the bottom. In December, 5 DBEs were awarded prime contracts, and a total of 32 contracts were awarded to DBEs. The total dollars to DBEs is 8.4%, or approximately $2.7 million. Combined with the June report, we achieved 14.02% that was awarded to DBEs last year. Next slide, please. This is the contract types that were awarded in December reporting period. This includes both non-DBEs and DBEs, and there were awards to professional services and construction, and we did not have any master contract or subrecipient awards. Next slide, please. And this is how the December report was broken down by gender and ethnicity. Some of the points that stand out in the contract are no awards excuse me, to Black, Hispanic, and subcontinent Asian women. On a positive note, there was some equitable distribution of dollars between women and men. Next slide, please. So what were some of the big contributing factors to this report? It was the Beeline traffic and transit advantages evaluation, a professional services contract for almost $8 million, which was about 23.65% of the dollars awarded. And this was 17%, or this had a 17% DBE commitment. The other was the Blue Line Enhancement Phase 2A construction contract for about $12 million, which was about 36.34% of the dollars awarded. And there was a DBE commitment of 3%. Unfortunately, we do not have a lot of DBEs that do rail work, and this is where a lot of opportunity is within the council, is this type of rail work. So next slide, please. This is a breakdown of DBEs in our directory. As you see, there's a 1,190 DBEs, and you can break them down by Metro District, Greater Minnesota, and because the DBE program is federal, we have DBEs that participate in the program from states outside Minnesota. Those are considered interstate firms. There were 48 contracts awarded to DBEs for the year, accounting for over $8.2 million. Next slide, please. And there were some successes. Again, 5 DBEs were awarded prime contracts, which was an increase from 1 on the June report. The other was 2 Asian Pacific women firms were awarded contracts, and there were not any contracts awarded to them or women firms in the June report. And with that, next slide, please. I will send it back to Ashanti, and he's gonna go through the last slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Trina. As Trina presented, we did achieve our goal. However, we are not just focused on compliance and regulation. We also have a keen eye towards equity. So we have already begun the work to identify where we do have gaps. One of the things that Trina pointed out is that, the lack of contracts from women of color. One of the things that we are doing on February 1st, we have partnered with some of our other Minnesota Unified Certification partners, MnDOT, MAC, City of Minneapolis, to put on a mentor protege event that has a focus and intent with businesses and construction firms owned by women of color. There are also, this slide just lays out some of the other strategies and things that we will be engaging with to achieve our goals around equity, and also continue to meet our regulatory and compliance functions as well. So I won't go through all of these, but the work is begun, and we will hope to see the fruits of that labor over this next period. And with that, we will pause for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments from council members? Councilmember Chambliss.
When will we get more detail about the improvements that were just listed?
Hopefully, well, we would welcome the opportunity to come back to this committee and present any updates on our work. We have a strategic plan that has been led by our engagement and development unit, so we can use that to right, track our progress towards our goals. So whatever schedule, whether it be quarterly, we can come back and present results on progress that we're making in those areas.
So we would definitely welcome that. Does it make sense to, if you report in June and December on these numbers, to kind of just extend that presentation to add that information maybe to start?
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Yes, that makes sense, and we will plan on having that as part of our presentation sometime after June.
Perfect, thank you. Any additional questions or comments from council members? All right, I'm just going to say then thank you to Ashanti and Trina. Thank you for bringing this to the committee tonight. On to our last information item. It's the electrical vehicle planning study results, and we have Tony Fisher from MTS and Brendan Jordan from the Great Plains Institute joining us tonight.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. It's nice to be with you today. My name is Tony Fisher. I'm a transportation planner in MTS, and I've been the project manager on the Met Council side for this project. We have with us Brendan Jordan today. He's the Vice President of Transportation and Fuels at the Great Plains Institute, and he'll be presenting. But if you do have any follow-up questions today, please feel free to contact me. The Great Plains Institute is a nonprofit here in Minneapolis that serves the Midwest region. They take on their own projects to clean up the fuel sector, serves us, and they do consulting work for others, such as this project. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Brendan. I know Brendan was going to try to phone in, so I'm not certain that technology was going to work. But I can take over if he's not able to connect.
I'm not seeing a phone number right now.
Yeah, why don't I
Okay.
take that then? I get that PowerPoint up again. Thank you. Next slide. There we go. So I just want to provide a little background on the work we're doing. We were in front of you early last year to preview the intent of the project. And we are here today with some draft strategies that the council can undertake to accelerate electric vehicles with an eye towards reducing climate impacts and improving public health. And then just a bit of on key takeaways, and happy to answer any questions you might have. Next slide, please. So with this study, we wanted to identify those strategies to accelerate EV adoption, again, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve public health. This study can help guide future investments, can help us with our policies and with our the work that we intend to do. We expect that this work can inform the transportation policy plan and other policy proposals. And the final work product is intended to be done May. We're going to finalize our strategies, and there's just a couple of other outstanding tasks to finish before that. Next slide, please. So we want to keep equity in mind with this project, and when we think about that, we think about the harms that our highways cause to nearby neighborhoods from that pollution. And we think about the access to resources to respond to climate change, and how oftentimes low-income and BIPOC communities have fewer resources to respond to those impacts. And the opportunities within electrification include zero tailpipe emissions, first benefiting those communities most harmed by our highways that concentrate that pollution. And we'll see later that doesn't mean zero pollution, but zero tailpipe emissions in those communities near these highways. Of course, central to electrification is the reduced greenhouse gas emissions, and that can further reduce those harms of those vulnerable populations. And then Currently, there's still some upfront added costs to electric vehicles. Those numbers are coming down and more in line with traditional gasoline vehicles. But even today, there are lower fueling and operating costs for drivers. So it can be a source of reduced transportation costs for public. And then we have some equity focused strategies, but we want to keep in mind how important it is to think about equity with implementing all the strategies. There's always opportunity to do things well or less well when it comes to equity. Next slide, please.
Hey, Tony, there is a phone number on here now. Do we want to see if that's Brendan?
Sure.
I'm checking. Brendan, have you been able to join us? No, I must not be. So it's back to you, Tony.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. So I kind of previewed this slide a little bit. This shows the reduction in greenhouse gases of electrification under different electrification generation mixes. And so here you can see the MISO regional grid is kind of the Midwest area, Minnesota average, Xcel Energy, and some other utility providers. Even under today's electricity generation, there are large reductions in greenhouse gases from electrification. And as those productions become cleaner and cleaner, getting towards 100% renewable, we can expect to see up to 95% reduction in greenhouse gases from electrification of transportation. Next slide, please. So there's some work that's been done and being done that support these strategies. We've done some analysis on travel patterns. We've done some fleet-specific analysis just because of the concentration of vehicles in a fleet and the concentration with a smaller number of decision makers. We're looking at the number of charging stations existing in the Twin Cities and those needed for a few different scenarios in the future. And we're doing some work around use cases where we just start to think about the variety of cases that people live in and how EVs fit or don't fit with the way people live in the Twin Cities. So we can think about the strategies that can help them. Next slide, please. And the next slide. So we did develop these strategies back in October. We've gone through a few iterations with these, but this slide just wants to highlight that we've been in front of TAB and TAC and TAB subcommittees, mostly in January, and finishing that up in February. Next slide, please. So the strategies are broken into 4 buckets, so there'll be 4 slides. This slide talks about the need for charging infrastructure and the roles that we might play in that. In some of these strategies, we could be leaders, we could be partners, or we could be primarily funders of different strategies. So they're further broken down into those categories. So there's interest in the regional solicitation and what is possible within the regional solicitation given federal money restrictions and given our own guidance and scoring in the regional solicitation. So clarifying that can be helpful to potential applicants. We could do some work to increase the visibility of electrification in the Livable Communities Act grants. Charging stations are an eligible activity. However, that hasn't been highlighted, and that contact with developers might be another opportunity to just share some additional information with them. There's space to really tell the electrification story in the transportation policy plan and the regional development guide and how that fits in with other greenhouse gas reduction strategies. And then there could be a project to look at opportunities to support charging infrastructure in affordable housing. We talked about the reduced operating and fueling costs, and there's a concern that buildings built without at least the conduit for the charging stations are really going to be left out as gasoline vehicles become less common, and more people are taking advantage of electrification.
Hey, Tony.
Sure. Oh, Brendan.
Hey, this is Brendan. I finally figured out how to unmute myself. I'm sorry, I've been here speaking into the void. I'll let you keep going. You're doing a good job, but I am on.
Okay. And yeah, I'm glad you're here, Brendan, especially for any questions that come up. So in that second column there are federal opportunities, utility opportunities for funding, and we can play a role just in clarifying some of that for our local partners. There's need for model ordinances. Some of our cities have taken on the task of developing parking ordinances for electric vehicle charging, and it is not without complexity. And then there is a definite need for DC fast charging. So that's the quickest type of charging where really you can pull up for 20 to 30 minutes at a grocery store or other location where you might want to be for a short period of time and get most of a charge that way. And then we talked about a strategy to develop programs or incentives that promote charging in multi-unit dwellings. This came from the Solar for Vouchers model, so that there was interest in seeing if there was something that could be done in this space along those lines. Next slide, please. So we need public charging, and we need vehicle availability, and that includes costs of those vehicles. So we talked within the electric vehicle availability group, we talked about are there ways that we can help identify financial support for EV car sharing programs, such as the St. Paul, Minneapolis Our Car, Xcel Energy partnership? Is there a space to do more in that area? We talked about looking at our own electric vehicles, and this is separate from Metro Transit's zero-emission bus transition plan. Really, with this project, we were focused more on the light-duty sector vehicles. You'll see in the second column, we did reference the zero-emission bus transition plan. We don't want to ignore that, but this was mostly focused on that light-duty sector. The third box in that first column, though, points to our metro mobility fleet and potential for electrification study there. And that's actually work that might be coming out of zero emission bus transition plan and might be coming forward sooner than we had thought. And then pointing to community development's work that they've done on sharing GIS data to help people grapple with equity and place-based investments. We thought there might be space for some data layers around electrification that could be helpful. And so that second column is really the Metro Transit Zero Emission Bus Transition Plan. So I'll jump to that last column there. And that's really about connecting cities and counties to available state, federal, and utility funding. You saw that under charging, but that's also can play a role in vehicle availability. Next slide, please. So another bucket of strategies is really communication. There's a need for a lot of information for the public and for our partners. So we talked about developing, disseminating marketing materials specifically developed for and representing targeted communities. We talked about enhancing our web page. Currently, our electrification web page really is centered around this project, and it could be broadened out to not to reinvent the great work that other people are doing in the space, but really to package that and point people to those resources. In the second column, there's space to help with a program that MnDOT and Great Plains Institute are developing called the EV Ready Certification Program. That's something we could partner with them on. And there's space to work with affordable housing providers and other organizations to educate their residents, just recognizing we can see a number of people in the same place. Be efficient that way. We want to continue coordinating with other partners, state agencies, nonprofits. We do that. We are a member of Drive Electric Minnesota that Great Plains Institute does operate, and it brings together automakers and nonprofits and manufacturers of charging stations. So that's a great place so that our efforts are coordinated with others. There are state agencies meeting, and we get to participate in some of those conversations around electrification at level of government. And there's a question if there's a need to convene local government partners to really center a conversation around electrification and the equity concerns and opportunities. And last but not least in this, one of the best ways to really get people comfortable with the new technology is for them to see and feel it through local ride and drives, an opportunity where they can ask questions of somebody who drives these vehicles. So that's an opportunity that we could play a role in. Next slide, please. So there are a number of areas we didn't think we could make specific recommendations on, but that were probably worth exploring further. We could look into e-bikes and e-scooters and the opportunities to reduce VMT there. We could look into the potential for e-cargo bikes to reduce VMT. And in the equity space, there's probably always an opportunity to understand better those impacts and opportunities around EVs in our current situation and in the future. And then pointing to a project we have coming up, we do need better metrics to measure the greenhouse gas reduction impacts of electrification projects and transportation more generally. And then it was in the news for a little while that first responders were struggling to respond to some of these electric vehicle crashes. They can cause some pretty dramatic fires that are very difficult to deal with. And so there might be a project to just inventory the readiness of our local governments to deal with these and try to share some information in that space. And then a question that's come up a few times is the role for counties in charging infrastructure and electrification more generally, facilities, their own right of way, but just understanding what is the boundaries of their potential opportunities, their role. Next slide, please. So electrification can definitely be a large part of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It is not intended to replace other strategies such as VMT reduction and biofuels, other types of fuels, but it can be a big part of that puzzle. There are inherent equity opportunities built into electrification, and I think with some work there are additional opportunities to advance equity. And there's a need for greater policy intervention, funding, resource sharing, and education. And the council can play a role as government. Next slide, please. Happy to answer any questions, and glad Brendan's here to help with that.
Thank you, Tony. Are there any questions from council members? Councilmember Sterner.
Yes, great presentation. I'm excited that that's occurring. My one question was, there wasn't show any partnership like with small businesses or BIPOC or disadvantaged businesses, but I just see that's like a missing thing. Like if we could work with strip shopping centers and geographically plan where these go in, and even if it's like a supporting of planning or some of the the things that show them what the opportunities are, I think it would be really helpful. But maybe there's some program constraints that I'm not aware of.
Sure, council members. We didn't get into the details of how potential funding would be distributed, but I think you're right that there's a lot of space when we think about equity to channel some of those funds.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that would be what I'd see if we can keep looking at small businesses or other business. So thank you so much. Appreciate your work.
All right, any additional questions or comments? All right, well, thank you, Tony and Brendan, and look forward to hearing from you in the near future, it sounds like. So, all right, that concludes our business for the evening. And I did want to, I believe that Councilmember Ferguson had to hop off, and it's kind of a bummer. I wanted to thank him for his service. He's been such a good participant on this committee, and so we will miss him very much. So, but I will make sure to pass that along as well. So just a final run through, if there's anything from any other council members. All right. If we're not, then we can be adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.